I don't agree with the fact that you can care too much. I think that you can never care enough. I think that we can mask some of our caring with some selfishness.
Yeah.
An example might be you care like crazy. You pour into an employee, you love them, you serve them, you make them a better human being, you uplift their family, you provide for them financially, you teach them a skill, you give them this amazing life through your leadership and through your employment, and then they leave. And someone might say like, oh, you cared too much about them, see? But the truth is we have to know and understand that our companies and that we're leading may not be the best for people at all times. And for us to believe that our company is the end all be all for all employees to work at forever of all time is unbelievably ignorant and wrong. And we just have to know what we're getting into. When we're business owners, we might have people leave our company, and we have to be willing enough to care about them genuinely, selflessly enough that when they do leave, we celebrate them, even when it hurts.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow? I'm going to hit you with a new term. Maybe you've never heard this before, or maybe you're really evolved and informed, but selfless leadership. Selfless leadership is not a common approach to leadership because a lot of leadership is focused on how do we get things done? How do we get the results? How do we drive sales? How do we drive profits? But selfless leadership takes a very different approach to this. It's really centered on the employee. It's centered on making sure that that employee understands that you care about them. And selfless leadership has a tremendous place if you want to create a place where people love to come to work and they're driving the business forward. I have a special guest with me today. It is Grant Botma. He is a co-founder at Stewardship. Stewardship is a unique company that combines mortgage brokering, financial management services, and insurance and things all together to really have a way to serve clients across all different spectrums of financial management. They are fast growing, which I've already said, been on the Inc. list last year, and it really is a great conversation with Grant today where we talk about selfless leadership. But we really talk about the details of the questions he asks his employees. Specifically, one of the questions will unlock something and maybe even cause you to resist this question. But if you're willing to lean in today's interview with Grant, you'll learn a lot about leadership, specifically selfless leadership and where it fits in. You'll also learn some of the unique ways in which he engages his people, even people who are no longer a fit in the company. He's got a really great way to talk about that conversation and about what happens next. When you think about leadership and you think about your own growth, make sure you check out Fast Growth Boardroom. We have a unique community for leaders that want to go beyond where they are today. They want to keep making an impact in this world, and they want to be stronger leaders because every employee deserves a strong leader. If you want to check out Fast Growth Boardroom, just see if it's right for you. If it is, apply. We'll get on the phone, we'll chat, we'll talk about some of the specific things to see if you're a good fit for this program. And if you are, we'll invite you into a community of fast growth leaders that are really doing some amazing things. We have some fun racing cars and doing some really cool stuff every quarter. All of it's centered around you being a stronger, better leader, more confident, and more effective. And that is the key to Fast Growth Boardroom. If you want to check it out, go to fastgrowthboardroom.com and apply today. Now here's the interview with Grant. Grant, how are you?
I'm doing well, Gene. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited.
Excited to have you here on the podcast. Growth Think Tank is a place for founders and CEOs like yourself to share what's working, what's not. And I'd love for you to give us a little bit of understanding of your company. And being on the Inc. list is really impressive, but tell us about Stewardship.
Yeah, so this is how we communicate it to our customers. Stewardship is a company that does home loans, insurance, and investments with wisdom and love. So it's a group of a number of different companies, a mortgage brokerage, insurance agency, investment advisory. We're kind of a one-stop shop for our community to get help with their finances.
Now, I've never seen this one-stop shop thing. Is this something you saw somewhere else, or have you just kind of had this idea of bringing it all under one roof?
Yeah, it's an idea that I had when I was in college. I got really passionate about finances. It's kind of weird. It was actually almost the emotion of hate that fueled it. I was in the personal finance world, and I got into that very early on at age 15. And man, I just saw so many bad things happening to people in my community that were trying to get their finances handled because I don't know, I feel like our society doesn't set people up for success. And I just wanted to create a place where people could get their finances handled in the best way possible, whether they knew it or not. And what better way to do that than to help them with as many areas of their finances as I could.
How many employees do you have, Grant?
We currently have 27.
And so at any level, you have to learn to be a good leader over time. You're probably not taught in high school and college and all that stuff. Where do you get most of your leadership insight from?
Yeah, that's a funny question. That's part of kind of how I introed my book about management and leadership. Is I tried to lead people the way that college taught me about managing. Basically, all the management books had similar things to say. You do the 90-day performance reviews and you set these goals that are like just outside of their reach, hoping that, because it's outside of their reach, they'll strive for that and go get it. And man, I failed at it. It didn't work out. Didn't fit me as an individual, didn't fit my personality, and it didn't work for the people I was hiring. And the traditional management ways, man, they didn't work. So I had to figure something else out. I just dove in and decided to learn in a different way.
So let's unpack what this different way is. I know when we were talking earlier last week, we really looked at, you care about your employees, and there's one key question that you ask. What is that question that gets talked about a lot inside your company?
So one of my primary roles as a leader in my company is to make sure my employees can answer yes to this question. Does my boss care about me? Because statistically proven, as I was diving in and trying to figure out different ways to manage people, I saw study after study after study that proved that fact. That if an employee or somebody that's under your leadership, under your charge can say, yes, my boss really cares about me, their performance dramatically increased, their retention dramatically increased, and it created a much healthier workplace culture. So that's a huge focus of my job day in and day out.
Did you discover this kind of in one go, or is this something that's evolved over the years?
Oh man, Gene, it's always a journey. Like I'm never like arriving one place or having this one epiphany moment and changing everything overnight. It's always just trying to figure stuff out, look at things, seeing how other people are doing them, and then testing them myself. I would say I was super skeptical of it at first. Like, oh yeah, people need to say, yes, my boss cares about me. And the reason why I was skeptical is because the traditional management books kind of teach this separation and relationship between the boss and the employee. And that's why that skepticism came. But when I just threw that out the window and kept going over and over and over again, letting my employees know I care about them, it's worked out really, really well. But yeah, I mean, letting somebody know that you care about them, it doesn't happen overnight, right? It's a constant thing that has to be there. Again, I have to show up every day and make sure I'm doing that.
I actually love the fact that you keep bringing up how constant it is and how it's evolved over time, because there's nothing about leadership that is set it and forget it. As much as we want to create empowered organizations and self-managing companies, when you think about this whole concept of care, what are some of the lessons you've learned along this journey of making sure that people feel cared for?
Well, I think we just hit it. It has to be consistent, right? It's got to be something that you're doing day in, day out, week in, week out, and you have to be very intentional about the ways that you're doing it. Something I like to say is the best intentions require intentional actions. Meaning, my guess, Gene, is that you have the best intentions to, be the best spouse or be the best parent or be the best podcast host ever, right? Like that's your intention. You want to be great at those things. But in order for those intentions to come to life, we have to follow them up with very intentional actions. And if I have that intention, and I'm sure everybody else listening to this podcast also has that intention to really let their employees know, like, yeah, I want them to know I care about them because I do care about them. You have to follow it up with intentional actions. And one of the things that I do to make sure I know that I care about them, or they know I care about them, is pursuing them. I pursue them with this thing that I call the 90-day employer review. So it's not an employee review, but a 90-day employer review.
Hold on for a second. Grant just talked about being intentional. I want to share something with you from the behind the scenes of my business. I've created a lot of content around this, but just a micro lesson for you. A lot of leaders focus on what do I need to do next? And the doing is important. We've got to take actions to get results, but there's something that's usually missing. The intentionality of who do you need to be as you're doing whatever it is. For example, If you do something from a place of frustration, are you going to get the best results? Most of the time, not. If you do it from a place of caring, or a place of empathy, or a place of being proactive, or really from a place of service, you will get different results. If you do it from a place of creativity, innovation, you're going to get different results. My question to you is, can you step back before you do anything and just ask yourself this question? Who do I need to be in this moment to do this well? Who do I need to be? And if you can get your mind centered on whatever it is, be intentional about it, then you will be able to do something at a much higher level and much more clarity, maybe quicker, but also it'll be more on point. Doing it from frustration or pressure, or doing it from a place of anger just won't work most of the time. I share this lesson with you because who do you need to be is about being intentional. Back to Grant. You got to tell us a little bit more about that, because I think it is a definitely flip of the switch. You opened this up with traditional management said every 90 days, we're going to talk about your goals and reset them, but you're actually getting them to talk about how you're doing as a leader, right?
Yeah. So a couple of things I found out by doing it, the traditional management kind of tactic of, hey, here's your goals, and then we'll review them in 90 days and see how you did. One, I was waiting 3 months to tell somebody if they were doing something right or doing something wrong. Like, nobody wants that. I don't want that. You don't want that. So I had to change to giving people feedback on the spot. So as people were doing things well, I would tell them, great job, attaboy, high five type thing. And if they were doing things wrong, I'm going to say, hey, good attempt, but we need to adjust it and make course corrections right away. And not only did I appreciate that as a manager, because it allowed people to change quicker, but everybody else appreciates that too. One of the motivating factors within all of us is affirmation. It's why, reviews on Amazon are one of the number one clicked things on the internet. Whether you're obtaining a mortgage, or you're buying a toothbrush on Amazon, you want to hear if it's the right thing for you. So affirmation, as people are going about their job, telling them, hey, you're doing it right, or you're doing it wrong on the spot, rather than every 90 days was big. So if I'm not doing that in the 90-day performance review, what am I doing? And I've got to answer that question. Does my boss care about me? One of the best things that I can do is pursue them and ask them questions. How do you feel about your job? How does your spouse feel about your job? How do your kids feel about your job and your work? What about your job do you love doing? What do you think you're really good at? What about your job are you not so good at? Is there anybody on the team that you love and really appreciate right now because they're super helpful, or they're just connecting with you? Is there anybody on the team maybe that you're not pumped up about, or maybe he's a little bit annoying? And it takes some time for them to trust you with these things. But if you're consistent, as we talked about before, and you genuinely do this every 90 days, and you respond correctly to the answers to those questions, they start to trust you and they really dive in. And Gene, I'm here to tell you that this tactic has given me some of the best ideas for my company's growth.
Hold on for a second. Grant just listed off a few questions that I think are really important for you to have if you want to adopt this employer review. We're going to put those questions into a quick little document for you so that you can use them for yourself. You can take them, modify them, personalize them, but I want to make it easier for you to step into this new lesson if you want to use this employer review. Just go to genehammett.com/employer review, and that will give you everything you need from that little segment where he listed off the questions. If you can't find it from there, go to the show notes on this episode with Grant Botma, and you will be able to get that link right there for you to download these questions and use them the way you need to. Just go to genehammett.com/employer review, and you'll get those questions for free. Now back to Grant. I love the questions that you were rattling off there because I think they're not normal. I did challenge you a little bit, Grant, here. I said, what's unique inside of what you're doing? I think this is really unique. I've had hundreds of interviews and no one has said they take an employer review. Did you learn this somewhere, or is this just something you figured out for yourself?
I would say that nothing I have learned or done is unique to me. I've figured things out from everyone everywhere else. And I've been really fortunate enough to have some awesome, wise people in my life, awesome, wise resources that I've pursued to help teach me and where I can learn. Again, I was failing in this area of management, and I said, I'm going to figure this thing out. So I dove into YouTube videos and books and podcasts and blogs and other people and just took information and kind of took it all together and said, I'll do do it my way this way. And when it comes to an employer review, really what it came down to was humility. Gene, I can be an arrogant jerk sometimes that thinks I know it all, right? And that confidence is super helpful when being an entrepreneur. But the humility of always understanding that I'm never going to arrive and that I can always get better is huge. And it's got to be more than just words. Again, you got to follow it up with intentional actions. So these employer reviews are intentional actions to let my team know I care about them, but also intentional actions for me to act on that humility to say, I can always get better. And I go into these things hoping that I pick up one little nugget of a way that I can grow as a leader, or my company can grow to better pursue our mission of loving people through their finances.
I want to go really deep into this with you. If you're willing to play with me, I think you're open enough, you're courageous enough to do this, but I also don't want to push you beyond your comfort zone. Is you've gotten multiple levels of feedback around how you're performing as a leader, what you're doing with your culture and whatnot. What has been the hardest to take specifically? And then, kind of how did you decide to address that and evolve so that you could serve that employer, that feedback better?
So the hardest thing to take is when an employee tells me something that I feel like I'm doing a really good job at, and then they say, and I have confidence in it and I'm excited about it, and then they say, you're not doing that well. That hurts. I mean, I wrote a book on management and managing people. I feel like I'm a really good communicator. I have videos, podcasts, I speak, and one time one of my employees told me, hey, Grant, the way that you're communicating to the team about this particular issue is bad. You can't do that. And I have a kind of trigger and habit after doing this for so many years that when they say something that I don't necessarily agree with or appreciate, I say, okay, yeah, thanks for telling me. And I just kind of absorb it. But for some reason, I let that one get to me for a little bit. And it was kind of sticking to me, and I was thinking on it. And as I thought about it over the several days, again, I was challenged to be humble and look in the mirror as I responded to this. And some of the things that they said in that, I think they were out of context and I was able to ignore them. But there were some things that they said and I'm like, oh, they're probably right. And I made some adjustments to the way that I was communicating to my team about this particular issue. And it ended up being a huge game changer. I learned a ton about communicating to people and leading people through that process. I was able to practice and learn about humility and try to be more humble in my leadership. But then also I was able to course correct my communication and apologize to my team through that. And wow, when you as a leader are able to say, hey, I messed up and did this wrong, I'm sorry, that lets them know that, man, Grant really does care if he's willing to be humble in front of all of us like this too.
Would you be willing to share with us the specific thing that you shifted in the communication, not about the issue, but just, was it listening or was it something else that we could learn from?
Yeah, for sure. It actually had to do with the way that I was communicating internally to our team about Dave Ramsey. So Dave Ramsey is obviously a very well-known financial guru, and I think some of the work and things that he does is amazing. I actually had taught Financial Peace University at my church for almost a decade. I thought it was great, but something that was like irritating me a little bit about the way that he communicated was it was very black and white. There wasn't a whole lot of nuance, and there was no room to make personal finances personal. So we were starting to shift some of our communication to our community different. And I was doing that internally with my team saying, hey, look, we're not going to just trumpet this Dave Ramsey thing because it's not leaving enough room for nuance. And I don't think it's the best way to serve and love our community. And as I was communicating those things, he said that I was spinning things in such a way that it almost looked like Dave Ramsey's a terrible person and a bad person and all these things, which I don't believe. I just think he's an unbelievable marketer. And I think that he has a very intelligent tactic in creating this tribe about what he's doing. So he has to do things those ways. And he said, my employee said, you need to let people in on that a little bit. You need to be a little bit more humble, even when you say you disagree with the way Dave Ramsey's doing certain things. So that's what it was.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that with us because it puts context around it. The whole thing about caring, it's such a misunderstood piece to leadership. I have had conversations with people before and talked about the importance of caring and it's a really critical element to this. And I had a leader respond back to me. It's like, you can care too much. And I said, yeah, but the problem is most people care too little. What do you think about the line at which you draw this caring thing?
I don't agree with the fact that you can care too much. I think that you can never care enough. I think that we can mask some of our caring with some selfishness.
Yeah.
An example might be you care like crazy. You pour into an employee, you love them, you serve them, you make them a better human being, you uplift their family, you provide for them financially, you teach them a skill, you give them this amazing life through your leadership and through your employment, and then they leave. And someone might say, like, oh, you cared too much about them, see? But the truth is, we have to know and understand that our companies and that we're leading may not be the best for people at all times. And for us to believe that our company is the end all be all for all employees to work at forever of all time is unbelievably ignorant and wrong. And we just have to know what we're getting into. When we're business owners, we might have people leave our company, and we have to be willing enough to care about them genuinely, selflessly enough that when they do leave, we celebrate them, even when it hurts.
I love this thought. And I've heard this recently a lot more is, what would it be like if you truly celebrated people when they left the company? And
Yeah.
such a different approach to this. And I'm glad you brought it up here because we really do shift things if you're willing to celebrate people. And the signal that shows to everyone else in the company, I think is tremendous. Have you actually seen this work and really, how has it changed the culture of the company?
Yeah, for sure. And we've done it several times. Listen, if I say I care like crazy and I take these intentional actions while they're employed and I treat them super well and everybody can see that I care about you and I care about the other employees and it works out great. But then as soon as somebody leaves, I treat them like a jerk and I don't celebrate them, all of that work so that people could answer the question, yes, Grant cares about me, goes out the window and it loses trust and it will kill a workplace culture. I'll give you a couple of examples. We've actually had two people on our staff over the time that our company's been together decide that they want to get into becoming a mom. They want to be a parent. And they thought that adoption was going to be the best route for them. And when they became a parent, I knew that they would end their employment with me. And rather than trying to fight that, I came around them as an individual, but also as a company, as a team of people. We came around each of those folks and supported them through their adoption by providing them flexibility throughout their work so that they could go through the classes and the necessary steps needed to make it happen, by helping them financially to ensure that the adoption process would go smooth on them, wouldn't impact them negatively financially. And then once they left, doing parties with them and having a great time. And what that's turned into in the future is one of them now just does photography kind of on the side. And she was actually in our office this past week doing new headshots and came in with her adopted baby boy, who's just the cutest thing ever. And everybody celebrates them. It's hugs, it's high fives, it's catching up with stories. And now they serve us by having this awesome tool and service of giving us headshots that look beautiful on our website and everything else. But it's this connectedness that is a part of the culture. It's a social engagement now that happens throughout the workplace culture that, again, drives performance and increases the just answer to that question. Yes, Grant cares about me.
I want to give one more question here because I think maybe the audience is curious like me. Is that's incredible when things are, a fit. You hate that person to leave, but you've done it in a very gracious way, in a very honoring way. And it really does support, I think, more than just the relationship between you and that person. It really does help the culture. But we all had employees who, for some reason, weren't a fit and some reason weren't performing on this. How do you handle that kind of exit approach?
You keep caring for them. They still need a job. And one of the best ways that you can help them exit is help them find another job. And it's not just like sending them listings of like, hey, you should try finding out this job here. Look, if you're managing people well and you're course correcting on the spot and you have really great accountability systems and goals and whatnot, if you're genuine leading with care, you can say, hey, heads up, what you're doing right now isn't necessarily great. It's not working out. So we need to adjust that. We need to do it this way, right? And then they make a mistake and then they still don't do that. Hey, you know what? It looks like you're still missing the mark here. What am I doing wrong? What could I do? Is there any resource or training or something that I've told you that's confusing you? I think this might be my fault. I'm the leader. Let me try to do something to fix it. And they might give some feedback and you do that thing to fix it and you still give the goals, but yet fail again. So now you come back to them the third time, like, okay, this is our third time. I've made some adjustments, but you're still missing the mark. What's going on, right? And if you have a great company culture with a great mission that everybody's pursuing and winning on, that person who's not pursuing that mission well, they stick out like a sore thumb. And after the third time, and after you've been humble enough to say, hey, look, we've got to make some adjustments because I've already made the adjustments. What about you? They respond back and saying, you know what? I think this is a me problem. I'm like, I think it is too. Let me help you find another job. And they agree. So they stay employed. And while they're staying employed, they do their best to pursue that mission. But for those few weeks, I genuinely help them try to find another job. I still celebrate them and thank them for the time that they've put in, even if it wasn't maybe the most productive time. And that's how I do that. And like, I've done that before, Gene, and that person ended up becoming one of the biggest referral partners for my business.
I love this, and it's such a rare piece to it. So I appreciate you sharing it. I'm glad I asked that final question because I could have just ended and we not get to the real heart of that. But that is such a unique way to look at it and a powerful way to relate to this difficult decision of this might not be working out. It might be time to leave. And I love the fact that you walk us through the conversation. So thank you so much for really doing this for us, Grant, being here on the show, sharing your wisdom and leadership.
Yeah, Gene, I think the bottom line with it is every business exists to serve other people. You're providing a product or service to a community. And if you want your team to really genuinely serve well with selflessness, you got to do the same to your team. Be a selfless leader, genuinely serve them the way that you want them to serve the community. And it ends up working out. This has been a lot of fun on this podcast. You're really great at this. This is really cool doing this interview. I loved the questions and the conversation. It was a lot of fun. Thank you. Well,
my job is to uncover the real story here. And Grant, I know you're listening in as I wrap up this message. Those that are really wanting to evolve as a leader, hopefully you've taken some notes today. Hopefully you got some questions. We're going to actually pull the questions that Grant puts into this kind of employer review, 90-day review. So it's easier for you to take them in, make them your own. If you'll just go to the episode notes, the show notes on this, and you'll be able to find those questions, download them pretty easily, and it's absolutely free. I just want to make it easier for you to evolve as a leader. If you are curious about what does it take to continue your path as a leader, learn from other experts like Grant and many of the other people, we've built a community called Fast Growth Boardroom. Inside this community is founder CEOs of fast growth companies that want to learn from each other, support each other, challenge each other. And I am coaching them. I'm providing content and framework to allow them to grow even faster and really create the kind of leadership that's necessary for them to grow. If you're curious about what that is, go to fastgrowthboardroom.com. You can see if you apply, and if it really is something that you think you're a fit for, I urge you to apply. It costs you nothing, and it will help you become an incredible leader for your team. Just go to fastgrowthboardroom.com. When you think of leadership and you think of culture, think of Growth Think Tank. As always, lead with courage.